The 2021 NHL Draft was the most chaotic in recent memory, with very few players playing more than a few handfuls of games due to COVID. And today we're going to dive into some of the gems that teams got because of limited viewings.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we'll be breaking down the 2021 NHL draft class, looking at some gems as we're doing this for every draft class since the year 2020. We've already done the one for 2020. That'll be linked below if you want to go watch it. And today we'll be looking at 6 players from the 2021 draft that are very, very good value now with hindsight. And most of these also being players that I really liked in this draft class that I thought deserves to be picked higher than they were the day of, pretty much. So we're going to be looking at guys like William Eklund and Wyatt Johnston in the first segment. In the second, we'll be focusing on Logan Stankoven and Ville Koivunen, and then we'll wrap things up in the final one with Matthew Knies of the Toronto Maple Leafs, as well as Dylan Duke, a very underrated gem of a prospect in the Tampa Bay Lightning system. But before we dive into the entire show here today, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So this is a fascinating draft class to kind of roll back the years and take a look at, because it was a year of true chaos. A draft class where most players played very, very little hockey. Of course, you had a bit more going on in Europe that season. Guys like William Eklund did play 40 games in the SHL, putting up 23 points in that range. But others, like Wyatt Johnston, only got into 0 games in the LHL. A lot of CHL leagues just didn't ever start up that year, and he was only really platformed at the U18 World Championships for Team Canada, where he played really well, but in a third-line checking role. And he did that job extremely well, but it led to him falling down on draft day because teams kind of just did kind of like a one-to-one equation of, well, he played that role on Team Canada, so that must be the player that he is. And it made everybody, myself included, underrate his talent. So very fascinating year for prospects, a hellish year for scouts in terms of really evaluating and comparing players. You had CHL guys also playing over in Europe. You had a lot of movement, a lot of chaos going on that season. And it led to some really nice like slam dunk picks later on in the draft. So we're going to be looking at some guys from the first round, some guys from the second round, and one guy that went real late on draft day, falling far further than I thought he should have, even at the time, with Dylan Duke. So let's just kick things straight off here with the older Eklund brother, William, who went to the San Jose Sharks at 7th overall. So he went high on draft day, top 10, easy. And yet he was, for me, the number 1 player in that draft class. Is that something that I would necessarily do again in a redraft? Maybe. I think there's a lot of names in that hat. There was no clear first overall pick in that draft class, and that was true at the time, and I think it remains true with hindsight. You have different styles of guys and different molds, and I mean, Wyatt Johnston would even be a contender for that award in a redraft today, but I do think that William Eklund has some of the most dynamic skill from this class, and is certainly a guy that I think that the Sharks are incredibly happy to have landed there at number 7 in the 2021 class. As I mentioned, he was playing with Djurgården in the SHL in that season, putting up really sound production. 11 goals, 12 assists for 23 points is nothing to scoff at. Wasn't quite as perhaps like exciting as his younger brother Victor was in his draft class this past season, but slightly different players. With William, you have a bit more dynamic on puck skill, a little bit less like middle drive. With Victor Eklund, it's just all motor, all intensity, everything just crashing the crease. And yeah, a lot of dynamic skill in that player as well. I think the Islanders got a gem there at 16th overall in this past June's draft. But with William Eklund, I think that there's so much to like with the playmaking skill, the vision, the intelligence, the ability to slow play down. And when especially he gets defenders on their heels and they're starting to backpedal, he hits the brakes. He lets that space expand on its own rather than trying to force every play and ramp up the pace without fail. He keeps himself unpredictable, and I think he's just been fantastic here recently with the Sharks, and is an incredibly important part of this rebuilding squad. So far this season, he's already up to 6 points in 8 games. And last year, he logged 17 goals and 58 points in 77 games as well with the Sharks. The year before that, he had a 45-point rookie campaign in 80 games. Like, just been quite perpetually a top 6 playmaking stud here with the Sharks. And I think that the chemistry he's built with Macklin Celebrini is also a really important piece for this team moving forward. Of course, the Sharks are still struggling to string wins together here. I mean, they only have 1 win so far this season, which came against the New York Rangers. They lost every other game, only one of those defeats coming in overtime. Still struggling to score goals as a team, as a collective, but Eklund is perpetually one of the most dynamic, creative, and intelligent players in this lineup, and I think that he certainly has upside for 75-point, 80-point ceiling, and doing that quite perpetually and consistently when he reaches his peak in the National Hockey League. So certainly an exciting player here for the Sharks. Then we've got Wyatt Johnston, of course, of the Dallas Stars, a player that pretty much everybody underrated in his draft year. I think even the Dallas Stars didn't quite know what they were getting in terms of top line, like just stud player who steps up in the most important moments time and time again. Has already logged 2 60-point campaigns. He exceeded the 70-point threshold last season. Both the last 2 seasons, he scored over 30 goals, and he's well on pace for that this year again with 5 goals and 9 points through 8 games, and he's just constantly playing over 20 a night. This is a true first-line player in the National Hockey League, playing on a better team than William Eklund, but I think you have a lot of arguments that you could make for Wyatt Johnston to kind of be a number 1 guy in a redraft in this class. There wasn't a superstar in this draft class, but Johnston just always elevates things when he gets to important moments, especially in the playoffs. He's a guy that gets to the middle of the ice. He's such a capable, intelligent playmaker. He's able to finish in tight from awkward angles and tight seams. Like, he doesn't need much space or time at all to make opponents pay. And he's a guy I fully underrated in his draft year. I had him ranked all the way down at 40th overall. He went at number 23 to the Dallas Stars, which I think was just an absolute scouting snipe from that staff. Like, a really, really great selection there from the Stars, and a player that stings a little bit for me to have had that low, but considering he only played 7 competitive games and they all came in a tournament, which I did watch, but again, he was playing 3rd-line minutes in that. I'm not going to beat myself up too bad over it, but definitely also a learning experience that just because a player is placed in a checking role does not mean that they're going to be checkers in the National Hockey League, especially when that comes in like stacked environments like Team Canada at the U18s. A coach's preferences and a coach's line matching desires have such a big role to play in that deployment that you don't want to read too much into that, especially when it's the only thing you have for your sample of a player in his respective draft class. So Wyatt Johnston, just an absolute slam dunk of a draft selection there with the Dallas Stars. And we'll actually kick off the next segment with another guy pick with the next selection that the Stars had, this time coming in the 2nd round, but he's no longer playing in Dallas, and that is Logan Stankoven. But I don't think Stars fans are complaining too much, considering that they landed Mikko Rantanen in that transaction. But before we delve into Stankoven's game, we've got a quick message here from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get 300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app. I love how FanDuel gives me every single opportunity to play in so many different ways, whether it's player props, same-game parlays, or even following the live lines as the action is unfolding right in front of you while you're on the couch enjoying the evening game. The choice truly is yours. My personal favorite are the same game parlays, as they allow me to combine multiple predictions from different games into a single bet to maximize my potential returns on that swing. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com right now to download the FanDuel app today to get started. All right, let's kick off this next segment here with the aforementioned Logan Stankoven of the Carolina Hurricanes, a player I've been high on forever, a guy that I was always so confounded by in terms of why he wasn't ranked highly. He brought every single thing in the book that makes an undersized forward valuable in the National Hockey League. I never had a doubt that he'd be an impactful second line piece in this league. And for him to fall all the way to 47th on draft day to the Dallas Stars in 2021 was ludicrous to me. I had him ranked way high, all the way up at 12th overall that season. I was a big fan of the intensity, the motor, the playmaking, the pace, the goal scoring in tight. There just wasn't anything I thought this player couldn't do on the ice. And he hasn't had like the explosive NHL start like Wyatt Johnston has just yet. I mean, he came in quite hot in that rookie campaign when he came in the back half of the season after dominating the AHL in 23-24 with the Stars and had a good playoffs to boot. But since then, his production has been about half a point a game pretty consistently. He had 9 points in 19 games last year after the trade to Carolina, had 29 points in 59 games before the trade in Dallas, and this year is up to 4 points in 8 games, but is just such a reliable player at both ends of the ice. He's playing already consistent top 6 minutes on a stacked Hurricanes roster that has been off to a flying start this season, playing basically 16 minutes consistently night in, night out. And I think that he's born and bred for Carolina Hurricane style hockey. The engagement, the buy-in, the forechecking intensity, the pace, like this is how Rod Brindamore wants his players to play hockey, and that's what he brings night in, night out. So even though, yeah, he's 5'8", 170 pounds, he's not a big, tall guy, but he has such a solid base, such a strong lower body. He's impossible to like push off of pucks. He protects possession incredibly well. He keeps the puck moving, doesn't hold on to puck touches for too long, and he's just so fearless at driving the middle of the ice with the puck on his stick and is never shy about just setting up shop right in front of a netminder's nose and just like playing that net front role. He's able to do a bit of everything really in the National Hockey League, and that adaptability and versatility is such an important part of being an undersized forward in the league today. And I definitely think he fell far too far on draft day, going all the way down to 47. He was so clearly a top half of the first talent in my eyes at the time. And the fact that he was the primary piece going back to the Carolina Hurricanes in that strange second trade of Mikko Rantanen at the back half of last season at the deadline, after he played only like 8 or 9 games in Carolina before getting flipped once again to the Dallas Stars. But he's a guy that I think that he shows why he has that value in this league. He certainly has already signed the extension to really show that value with an 8-year deal, giving him $6 million a season that carries all the way through the age of 31 years old. So he signed a big deal, but I think that number is going to be such a bargain, even by year 1 or year 2, with the deployment he's getting, the matchup minutes he's facing, the power play versatility he brings. I think he's going to be a perpetual 60-point guy, 65-point guy in the National Hockey League at his peak, and he's still taking the steps to get to that level, but I really have little doubt that he will reach that ceiling eventually. But to wrap up the second segment, we've got Ville Koivunen of the Pittsburgh Penguins, another guy that has been traded since being drafted, this time going from the Carolina Hurricanes to the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was drafted 51st overall in 2021. A guy I had ranked way higher as well at 25th overall. I've always loved the motor and playmaking combination with this player, and it's really starting to shine in the National Hockey League. Last season, he got a little taste test of the NHL playing 8 games at the end of the season with the Pens, scoring 7 assists in that span, was dominant with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins as well, scoring 21 goals and 56 points in 63 games in his rookie campaign in North America. And this year, he's played 2 pointless games with the Pittsburgh Penguins to kick off the campaign, and was sent back down to the AHL, where he's just lit it up. 4 goals, 11 points in 6 games is absurd. But he's a player I really do see as a future second line piece in Pittsburgh. Like, even at the end of this rebuilding stage, I mean, if they stop winning, because they have shown no sign of slowing down here recently, I still think that he's going to be a really important line driving piece in a top 6 capacity. He's such a confident puck carrier, unrelenting intensity and skill, the attacking mindset, the processing speed. He's just so modern in terms of approach on the ice, and he has such a long track record of success already at the professional level. He's strung together 3 really strong pro campaigns in the Finnish Liga with Karpat, and he's now adding 2 strong professional campaigns in North America. I think that breakout as an NHL, like, night in, night out, 15, 16-minute a night guy is just going to be coming here by year's end. I think he'll get there this season, in my opinion. And he's a player that just always leaves me so impressed every time I tune in to watch him play. Really, really fun player to kind of keep your eye on and to kind of watch just in isolation on a shift-to-shift basis. And he actually hasn't lost a single game here so far this season. He was like unbeaten in the NHL in those 2 games, with 2 victories over the 2 New York teams. And then since being sent back down, it's just been dominant for the Scranton Penguins so far, with just like only 1 game even being close since being sent back down. That was the most recent 3-2 overtime win against the Charlotte Checkers. And Koivunen had a goal and assist among those 3 goals scored by his team. So very clearly an integral piece to their success here early in the season. And I think that was, to me, the most important asset gained by the Pittsburgh Penguins in that Jake Gensel deal. They got like 5 or 6 pieces that were like B-level pieces from the Carolina Hurricanes in the Gensel trade a couple of years ago, but Koivunen from day one was the starlet of the bunch in my eyes, and I think he's been showing exactly why that's the case ever since joining the Penguins organization. But for you Penguins fans out there, I'd love to pass the question on to you. What are your takeaways of Ville Koivunen so far? You've seen him in the NHL, maybe you've watched him in the AHL as well. I think that just the intelligence, the pace, and the skill, the playmaking are the things that I am always impressed with every time I watch him play. But is there anything else in his game that has really stood out to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. But that wraps things up here for the second segment for us today. And the final one, we're going to be talking about Matthew Knies and Dylan Duke, one of my favorite depth picks of the 2021 draft class. But first, we've got a quick message here from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. All right, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment as we're talking about Matthew Knies of the Toronto Maple Leafs to kick things off, a player who slipped way down the draft board all the way to 57th overall. And in all honesty, I had him so far too low in his draft year. I had him ranked 80th overall on my board. And yeah, that stings a little bit with hindsight, but he was a player who was playing injured and ill in his draft year campaign. So he looked a bit lackadaisical and lacking energy, which was a very different style of play to what he had in his D-1 campaign with the Tri-City Storm. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, they really did their homework on this player. They engaged in interviews. They got a real understanding as to why he had the limitations in his draft year season that he did. And as soon as he hit the college ranks the next year, he just blew up. 33 games, 33 points with the University of Minnesota. He followed that up with 42 points in 40 games the year after, and then just jumped straight into the National Hockey League, playing a top 6 role with the Leafs. And last season, he had 29 goals, 58 points, and this year he's off to an even hotter start with 2 goals and 10 points in 9 games, really playing a role as a playmaker and stepping into the Marner-shaped void there in terms of line driving and playmaking creation in Toronto. And I think he's a player that is just so easy to fall in love with if you're watching him play. The intelligence, the awareness, his head is just constantly on a swivel. His head never stops scanning, and he has a really detailed mental map of the ice. So he paints a picture of his surroundings and is able to just make really fast-paced and clever decisions under pressure time and time and time again. And that's why he's such a great complement to a guy like Austin Matthews. He's able to just, with a quick little shoulder scan, very, very short in terms of how much time he needs to look over his shoulder to really get a great idea of where he has to place the puck on like a spin in terms of his passing ability. And he also brings the physical dimension, right? He's a big boy, 6'3", 231 pounds as a left shot winger. And in terms of that combination of playmaking and intelligence and net front physicality, this is a style of play that every single team in the league needs. I mean, Montreal Canadiens got this player at first overall in that 2022 draft a year later, but the Leafs got him way late in the second round with Matthew Knies. So just totally fun to see the steps that Knies has been able to take since being drafted. But he's not the last player that I want to talk about here on the show today, because Dylan Duke has always been a personal favorite of mine, a player that, yeah, has a diminutive frame at 5'10", 176. He can play center. He can play wing. He's got a relentless motor. And even in his draft year, he was the very best player in the entire draft class, specifically at the net front role. That's what he does better than everybody else. He's a guy that just excels at getting tips, at gaining inside position, at beating off bigger, stronger defenders, and really planting himself in those dangerous areas. And it led him to being a really dominant player in college hockey. With the University of Michigan, he put up a 49-point season, 41 games in his last year there in his junior campaign. Also had 32 points in 41 games as a sophomore, and made a very, very seamless jump to professional hockey last season with the Syracuse Crunch in the AHL, scoring 20 goals, 20 assists for a nice even 40 points in 62 games. And he still excels at the exact same things he always has. And I think that consistency year to year of not changing how he plays, but improving the details that support his style is one of the reasons that he's going to be a bottom six stalwart with the Lightning for a long time to come. I think he's a very high likelihood player at cracking the NHL and being highly effective in that league. And I had him ranked 41st overall in his draft year. And you want to know where he got drafted? 126. That's low. That's really, really low in the fifth round. But the Tampa Bay Lightning really sniped him because they traded up into that slot with the Montreal Canadiens to select Dylan Duke. They targeted him. It was late fourth round. My apologies, but still way later than he should have gone on draft day. And I think that he's a guy that is in the perfect system to develop as a bottom six checking nightmare for oppositions and really being a net front option, even on a second power play unit. He's able to do that so well and get his stick onto point shots and pounce on rebounds, finish chances in tight. The loose pucks are just a three-course dinner for this player. Like, he really just eats that up. And so far this season, he's played 6 games in the AHL, and he has a goal and 4 points, same pace he had last season pretty much. And I'm very curious to see when he gets an NHL shot, because I think he should at some point this season, especially if injuries arise. But to wrap things up here on Dylan Duke, I wanted to read out a game report written by my friend and colleague Simon Desjardins at Elite Prospects that he covered on a mid-April game of him from this past season. So mid-April 2025 against the Utica Comets. And he writes, Duke unfortunately got injured in this game, but it did not prevent him from leaving an incredibly strong impression despite not playing the full 60 minutes. His intensity and play around the net stood out, with relentless effort on the forecheck and very good habits on retrievals. 2 sequences come to mind. After winning a race for the puck and retrieving it in the corner, he misdirected the defender by pointing his hips one way before switching in the opposite direction, and used his edges for a quick exit from behind the net. The other sequence was very simple. He was once again behind the net and poke-checked the defender, but made sure to direct the puck towards his teammate in the slot. Offensive flashes were relatively limited, but he had one chance to get a good shot on net, which was quickly released, but unfortunately directed at the netminder's chance. So I think the takeaways from these assessments are also, yeah, he's not the most dynamic individual creator. He's not going to single-handedly dangle through an entire defensive structure, but in terms of playing a system role, which is exactly what Tampa Bay asks of their bottom six pieces, I think he's tailor-made for this system. He has the intensity, he has the mindset, he has the specialty as a net front guy. There's so much to like with Dylan Duke, and I think that he's a player that's only going to get closer and closer to that role as the season progresses, and maybe he's able to win a spot out of training camp next season. But that wraps up the show here for us today. If you're watching on YouTube, please do leave us a comment down below, whether it be on your impressions of any one of the six players we talked about here today, like Logan Stankoven, Wyatt Johnston, William Eklund, Dylan Duke, Ville Koivunen, or Matthew Knies, or if there's a player from the 2021 draft class who was an absolute steal that I didn't get to in this show. I only have half an hour to talk about these players, so the number of guys I can cover is a little bit limited because I did want to talk a bit in depth about each one of these names, and I'd love to hear about the guys that stand out to you as big-time steals from this class. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. It's always greatly appreciated. And for your second listen, you're going to head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything that you need to know to build yourself a competitive and sustainable fantasy roster. That is it. That is all. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA Scout over at Elite Prospects. Thank you so much for listening as always, and I'll catch you tuning in again very, very soon.